If you haven't followed it closely, because it's still a year off, I understand. But here's how the college football playoff is going to work. 6 highest rated conference champions determined by the College Football Playoff Committee will receive automatic bids. The next 6 highest rated teams will get at-large bids. The 4 highest rated conference champions will receive buys into the quarterfinals. First round games will be played at the home stadium of the team with the better seed. Okay. So what I want to address is number 2 on that bullet point list. The next 6 highest rated teams will get an at-large spot. So a guy that we like, Joe Klatt, quite a bit, said they are effectively, 2 of those spots are effectively reserved for the Big Ten and the SEC.
No, all 6 of them. All 6 are the at-large spots.
So they're going to, well, I'm not following then. So
what Joel Klatt is predicting is that, so it's the top 6 conference champions, which you're going to have the SEC and the Big Ten be among the top 6 every year.
Okay, so we're at 6.
We're at 6. And then he said the other 6 at-large bids, he thinks basically what's going to happen is that it's basically just going to be for the Big Ten and the SEC. It's going to be almost reserved for the rest of the best of the Big Ten or the SEC. So all 6 at-large bids will be just Big Ten and SEC teams almost.
Okay, I want to play a little game here. It's called Should've or Will It? It's workshopping, okay? Admittedly, right here on the air. So, should it? No. I mean, not all. I mean, you could argue that the next 6 best teams are from the SEC and Big Ten. And I would have zero problem if it shook out with that happening. But let's look at the ACC, for instance. Whether or not Clemson or Florida State wins that conference, if they're both knocking at the door, how are they not going to be included? So I don't see that. I don't see how all 6 could go to the Big Ten and the SEC, and you're going to get politics involved. So does the ACC and Pac-12, 10, whatever they are, do they have as much pull and power as the SEC or Big Ten? Heck no. Caleb, I'm not an idiot. I don't think that's the case. But I will tell you this, there's going to be enough politicking for those conferences to keep the entire nation involved in this playoff. So, no, I don't think all 6 will ever be just Big Ten and SEC. Do you?
No, and let's go with last year. If this were to have happened last year, the 6 conference champions would have been Georgia, Michigan, Clemson, Utah, Kansas State, and Tulane. The 6 at large would have been TCU, Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, USC, and Penn State. So 4 of the 6 would have been reserved for the SEC and the Big Ten, because you would have had Alabama and Tennessee and Ohio State and Penn State all get in. But then you would have had USC as a runner-up and TCU as a runner-up also get into the playoff. So I think Joel Klatt has a point, though. Look, I'm reading this as I'm reading this to you now, Dave. USC's in the Big Ten and going to be in the Big Ten in 2024. So
right, and I almost said the same thing about Texas and Oklahoma. That they'll be in the SEC. I just can't imagine. Okay, let's take a look at last year. All right, who would be if we're going that those automatic or non-automatic bids go to SEC and Big Ten? Who are we arguing from the SEC that's in? Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee.
Yes. And then the next team in there would have been LSU, but they're down at number 17. And I don't think anybody thought LSU should have been in last year after what happened in the SEC title game.
Okay. And Big Ten's even easier. Okay. Because on a good year, it's going to be Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State. I don't know who the best team is in the Big Ten.
Well, so again, it's going to be USC, but until then.
Oh, yeah. So USC. I'm sorry. So let's say we have 4. Okay. So I don't see how you get to 6 in the Big Ten, and I think it would take a special year in the SEC as far as wins and losses.
Yeah, because what we're talking about here is it would be 8 teams total from those two conferences, because the two conference champions plus 6 at large teams total. So we're talking like effectively the top 4 teams in each conference getting into the playoff. I think that's more possible than you, Dave, only because I got to be honest. I do think the playoff committee, and they should do this. There's so much democracy at work to allow 6 conference champions, which is in a 12-team playoff is kind of laughable because, one, they already give priority to conference champions. So the idea that Tulane at number 17 or wherever should have been one of the automatic bids it's hilarious to think about. I think what this opens the door for them to do is this opens the door for them and the playoff committee to say, hey, yeah, we're going to give preferential treatment to the 9-3 Big Ten team over the 11-1 ACC team. And if you got a problem with that, you should have won the ACC. You can't say we didn't. You can't say we excluded you because you could have won your conference to get in. This is a way for them. I think I've said this for a while. The college football playoff is actually a way for them to more favor the bigger teams, which has been a conspiracy of the, oh my God, let Boise State in. They have this theory that the smaller teams are discriminated against somehow. And what I'm trying to make the case is, I think the expanded playoff is actually just an excuse to more favor the big teams so they can shut the smaller teams complaining up. Really.
That's fair. I don't see a day that there are 4 Big Ten teams that can make this thing.
I mean, there would have been last year.
What?
There would have been last year. That's what I'm talking about. Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and USC all would have made it last year.
Yeah, but left out USC again. Well, I mean, the more we work through the argument, I guess he's got a point. I think the SEC will beat up on each other, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Are you gonna take a 9-3 SEC team for an at-large bid or a 10-2 ACC team for an at-large bid? You're taking the 9-3 SEC team.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. And on the message board, Travis, I don't think USC is better than Ohio State and Michigan. Just if I misspoke there, I think they're very comparable to Penn State. Very. And I think Ohio State and Michigan will still rule the roost in the Big Ten, even with USC and UCLA in there. So, I believe politics will keep this from happening. I believe that they'll get a second team, be it Oregon or Washington or whoever, that will bring you in more TV viewers nationwide. I think politics will be involved.
I think the politics is the automatic conference bids. That's the politics of it. Because there shouldn't be 6 conference champions playing for this thing.
Right, but I'm talking about moving forward. If they're in a room and they say, hey there, we've got this 12th team, and we can go with Oregon or we can go with LSU or Southern California. I think they would go with Oregon.
See, I don't think
Washington.
they would. I think when it's 4 and 5, they can choose that path of least resistance and go politics a little more, or they feel like they have to. I don't think they feel that. I don't think this committee. I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to go with the best teams, and they know the best teams are in the SEC and the Big Ten. I think the 12-team playoff allows them to do that. They don't have to worry about politicking anymore because they can go to Oregon and they can say, hey, you're mad you're not in, you should have won your conference. And they can just straight up say that to them now.
No, very fair. Very fair. I agree with all that you just said. Here's the other thing that we haven't factored in. Nobody has traveled like Southern California is going to travel and UCLA are going to travel. How much of a wear and tear does that have on the body in November? Now, I know these are young men, but I can tell you that I got wear and tear just driving to Florida and back. So, and that, you're going to have to go out there probably a Thursday night, stay a Friday. I mean, does USC and UCLA, do they lose a game just because they are making this unprecedented travel schedule? I think one of the two every year will. I think they'll cruise out to Rutgers, bad example, but they'll cruise out to Rutgers or maybe it's a Penn State, or maybe it's an Iowa or whoever. No, not Iowa. Who's a mid-level?
Penn State and Ohio State are both on Eastern time, so that is a 3-hour time difference between USC and Ohio State or Penn State.
Yeah, and just being on the plane. So I think that'll cost them a game a year. And I'm gonna and Travis said too, going back, not bouncing back between topics. He said they'll never allow 4 SEC and 4 Big Ten teams in the same playoff. I tend to agree with that, right or wrong. But isn't that going to cost them a game? That much travel, having to come east?
I mean, yes, but you could also say it might cost one of those teams a game having to fly out to USC for a game every now and then, because it's think about let's go with the NFL for a minute. Let's say, the NFC and the AFC West, like let's take the AFC West, for instance. Kansas City is in Missouri, and then the rest of the teams are on the West Coast. I don't really think it messes with Kansas City to have to fly out to play those games. Now, it's not. So, I mean, now again, losses aren't as impactful in the NFL, but I would say now losses aren't going to be as impactful in college football. If you're in the SEC or the Big Ten, a loss is now like a loss in an NFL season rather than what it used to be in a college football season.
I'll say one thing. I know that every school has chartered flights, but if USC and UCLA don't have a plane that says "Fight on" or "Go Bruins" or something, so that when they fly into town, it's more marketing dollars, they're missing out on something big. They should make USC and UCLA showing up in your town a big deal, because let's face it, a lot of the Big Ten cities are really boring. So you show up and you got the camera guys and you make sure that sports information knows about this, and the camera guys are shooting and they're good to go and they're excited. And then you've created an event, not just a football game.
It's funny. That's what fans hated. I will never forget during the USC reign in the mid 2000s. Your traditional SEC and Big Ten fans hated the Hollywood nature of USC, but it's like Pete Carroll was so smart. He embraced that. He knew the Hollywood aspect of USC is what would sell USC to recruits and keep the kids in California rather than going to Colorado. And do you remember that, Dave? Remember how much that annoyed SEC fans, the Hollywood love of USC? But it's like, why wouldn't they take advantage of that? You take advantage of what you have.
Amen. Amen. And I think when they fly in, I would have a big red and gold plane. I don't know that UCLA is committed enough to do that, but
have Snoop Dogg getting off first and shaking hands with everybody.
Yep. Exactly. I'm not even joking. That's what I would do, because you need to grow your recruiting footprint. There are a lot of guys, let's face it, that are born in Pennsylvania. And if you went to them and say, you can play in the Big Ten, your parents can see you, and you can play in LA with that type of money, they're going to cruise. I mean, Southern California might never win a Big Ten title, but they're going to affect Michigan and Ohio State's recruiting. There is no question.
Yeah, and USC is almost. I'm not going to go here, but they're almost a Notre Dame where they have to go national, because despite all the talent in California, Dave, this California is the anti-Louisiana. Kids in California don't feel any loyalty to that state, to staying in that state to play college football whatsoever. They'll go wherever to play.